What did your parents say to you as a kid that still affects you today? Storytime. She's gone now, but when I was a kid I had a great aunt who was a lesbian. We're talking around 1967. Let's call her Bella. My grandparents threw a big party with all of their friends from work, etc. And Aunt Bella came with her partner. I noticed something that intrigued me, so I went and asked my mom. How come all the ladies came with men, but Aunt Bella came with another lady? I was 5 at the time. My mom said, matter-of-factly. Most men like women and most women like men, but some men like other men, and some women like other women. Oh, okay, I said, and that has stayed with me to this day. It's so simple even a child can understand. Before we get into the sweet part, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If you're watching us for the first time, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification so you never miss any new story. I was 7 when I started noticing the world didn't always treat everyone the same. It was a small thing that kicked it off. Just a simple question I asked at a family party. But somehow, the answer I got stayed with me forever. It was my cousin Marcus's 8th birthday, and the house was full of noise, people laughing in the kitchen, the TV blasting from the living room, and kids zooming up and down the hallway like their feet were on fire. The air smelled like fried chicken, mango juice, and birthday cake. Someone's baby was crying upstairs. It was one of those loud, colorful, chaotic days families are made of. I was running around with Marcus and some other kids when I noticed someone different walking through the front door. It was my Aunt Bella. And she wasn't alone, she walked in holding another woman's hand. The woman was smiling, wearing a blue dress and round glasses. She seemed gentle, like someone who would remember your favorite color even if you only told her once. They looked happy, laughing about something as they stepped inside and took off their shoes. That's when I noticed something. Every other adult I'd seen come to the party had arrived in pairs, usually a man and a woman. Uncles and aunties. Moms and dads. But Aunt Bella came with another woman. It wasn't weird to me. Just different. So I went to ask my mom. Because whenever I didn't understand something, she was the one I asked. She never laughed at my questions. She didn't brush them off. Even when I once asked why clouds don't fall out of the sky, she sat me down and tried to explain. She was in the kitchen, fixing someone's plate of food. I tugged on her sleeve. Mom, I said, how come all the ladies came with men, but Aunt Bella came with another lady? She paused for just half a second. I remember that pause. She looked at me, then glanced over her shoulder, probably at Grandma. Then she knelt down so we were eye to eye, and she said something I'll never forget. She said, sweetheart, most women marry men, and most men marry women. But sometimes, women love other women. And sometimes, men love other men. That's okay too. That was it. No long speech. No confusion. No stem, just truth. Spoken simply. I blinked, nodded, and said, oh. Okay. And that was the end of it. At least for me. I ran back out of the kitchen to join the other kids playing tag in the backyard. Marcus tagged me almost immediately and yelled, you're it, and I forgot about my question for the rest of the day, but the answer, that stayed with me. Later that evening, I saw Aunt Bella and her friend, whose name I learned was Maya, sitting on the porch. They were talking quietly, sipping lemonade. Aunt Bella had her arm around Maya's shoulder, and Maya was laughing at something Aunt Bella had said. They looked so comfortable. Like they belonged, but not everyone acted like they saw it that way. I started noticing things. Small things, like how Uncle Joe barely said hello to them. Or how Grandma kept looking over like she wanted to say something but never did. And at one point, I overheard someone whisper to another guest, well, she's still doing that. I didn't understand everything they meant, but I knew one thing, whatever Aunt Bella had with Maya, it made people uncomfortable. That bothered me, because it didn't seem wrong. They weren't hurting anyone. They were just happy. Later that night, when the house quieted down and guests started leaving, I sat on the floor near Mom while she folded wrapping paper and picked up discarded bows. I looked up at her and asked, do people get mad when a girl loves another girl? She looked tired. But she sat down beside me and said, some people do. Because it's different from what they're used to. And sometimes people don't like what they don't understand. I thought about that. Is it wrong? She shook her head. No. Love is never wrong. I didn't say anything. I just leaned my head on her shoulder. She stroked my hair and whispered, I hope you always remember that, baby. People will say a lot of things. But you follow what's kind. What makes you feel like yourself. That's what matters. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment something inside me got planted. Like a little seed. The kind that doesn't bloom right away, but waits. Quiet. Still. Until the time is right. For now, I just felt warm. Safe. That night, I lay in bed thinking about Aunt Bella and Maya. I wondered what their house looked like. I imagined them sitting on the couch together, watching cartoons. I pictured Maya reading bedtime stories the way my mom did, and I decided that if they were happy, that's all that mattered. The next morning, I told my best friend at school that Aunt Bella brought a lady friend to the party. She scrunched up her nose and said, "That's weird." And I just shrugged. My mom said it's okay, I told her, and somehow, that made me feel stronger. Like I had the answer to a secret question no one else was asking. It wasn't until many years later that I'd realized just how powerful that moment was. How rare it was to have a parent who gave you space to understand the world with kindness. Not fear. With love, not judgment. At the time, I didn't think much of it, but that one sentence, so casual, so calm, ended up being the sentence that shaped the rest of my life. That's okay too. After that party, I started noticing more than I used to. Not just the things people said, but the things they didn't say. You know how, as a kid, you don't really understand why people get quiet when someone walks into a room, but you feel it. That was me. I couldn't always explain what was happening, but I knew something shifted when Aunt Bella was around. She didn't come to every gathering after that. She used to show up for every holiday, Easter, Christmas, Thanksgiving, even random cookouts. But suddenly, it was like she was busy all the time. She's working late. She's traveling this weekend. She and Maya had other plans. But the truth was there in Grandma's face every time her name came up. Tight lips, forced smiles. That kind of smile that looks like someone is trying to pass a test they don't want to take. One afternoon, I heard Grandma on the phone. I was sitting on the floor, coloring, pretending not to listen. But I heard her. She said, "I don't know why she has to make everything so difficult. If she would just be normal, we could move on like a family should." That word, normal, stuck with me. I didn't know what it meant back then. But I knew Grandma didn't mean it in a nice way. I asked my mom about it later while she was sorting laundry. "Is Aunt Bella not normal?" I asked. Mom sighed. It was a tired, quiet sound. She folded a towel slowly before she spoke. "She's perfectly normal, honey. She's just not what some people expect. And sometimes, when people don't understand something, they say mean things." I nodded. That answer made sense. It was kind of like when the new kid at school wore homemade shoes and everyone made fun of him, until we learned his family couldn't afford store-bought ones. After that, a few of us started walking with him to lunch. We understood. The teasing stopped. Understanding seemed to make everything better, but the older I got, the more I noticed that not everyone wanted to understand. One Sunday, after church, we all went to Grandma's house for lunch. Everyone was there, my cousins, my uncles, the aunts with too much perfume, the uncles who laughed too loud. We were halfway through the meal when Aunt Bella and Maya walked in. They brought homemade banana bread and a tray of roasted veggies. Maya waved at everyone and gave me a warm smile. I waved back. Aunt Bella ruffled my hair and whispered, "Hey, superstar." But no one else said much. They said hello, sure. But the kind of hello people give when they have to, not when they want to. It was awkward. Quiet. Like someone had dimmed the lights in the room. We all sat down to eat. Conversation buzzed around me like bees, talk of sports, jobs, politics. But whenever Maya tried to join in, the conversation would pause. Like a scratched CD. Someone would politely nod and then steer the talk away, like her words didn't count. I remember Uncle Joe saying, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Well, this table's got quite the variety today." There was laughter. Not the good kind. The kind that comes with a sharp edge. Aunt Bella didn't say anything. She just kept eating, face calm, eyes lowered. I looked at Mom. She gave me that look. The one that said, "We'll talk later," and we did that night, while she washed dishes and I dried them. I asked, "Why do they treat Aunt Bella like that?" Mom wiped her hands and leaned against the counter. "Because they don't understand her," she said. "They think love has to look a certain way. And anything different scares them." "Why are they scared of love?" I asked. She smiled softly. "That's a really good question. And if I knew the answer, I'd fix the whole world." I dried a plate and stared at the sponge in my hand. Do you think Aunt Bella is sad? I think she's stronger than all of them, Mom said. But, yeah. I think sometimes she feels alone. That made my chest ache. Is Maya her wife? I asked, not officially. Some places don't allow it yet, she said. But they live like they're married. They love each other. That's what matters. I thought about that. I thought about how nobody made a big deal about Uncle Ray and Aunt Kim hugging. But when Maya put her hand on Bella's shoulder, people acted like they just saw a ghost. I didn't like it. A few weeks later, I had to write a school essay titled, Who is Your Hero? Most kids wrote about soccer players, firefighters, or their moms. I wrote about Aunt Bella. I wrote about how she kept showing up, even when people were cold to her. How she laughed anyway. How she made banana bread that tasted like heaven. How she loved Maya without hiding it, even though people stared. I didn't think much of it, until my teacher pulled me aside the next day. Did you mean what you wrote? She asked gently. Yes, I said. She smiled. That was very brave. I didn't feel brave. I just felt honest. Later, I told Mom about the essay. She read it, and when she finished, her eyes were glassy. You made me proud, she said, and then she hugged me tightly, like she wanted to squeeze the air out of my lungs. That was the thing about Mom, she never yelled to be heard. She taught. With silence, with patience, with love. She didn't fight people. She didn't correct every comment or challenge every frown. But she showed me, in every word she chose, how to treat people, with kindness. With curiosity. With care. I was still just a kid, but I could feel something inside me changing. That little sentence she gave me, that's okay too, was growing roots. Quiet roots. The kind that hold you steady when the wind starts to blow. I didn't know it yet, but I'd spend the rest of my life holding on to that. By the time I was in 4th grade, the world had gotten louder, and so had the kids around me. We were all starting to notice things, like who had the newest sneakers, who packed lunch in Tupperware instead of brown bags, and who brought 2 moms instead of a mom and a dad to parent day. That's how I met Lila. She came in halfway through the school year. Shy, quiet, always drawing in her notebook. She had curly hair she didn't like anyone to touch and a habit of chewing the ends of her pencils. Her moms came with her on the first day, 2 tall, smiling women in jeans and matching jackets. One had a pixie cut and tattoos down her arm. The other wore glasses and carried a backpack like a student. They stood at the front of the class, smiling, as our teacher introduced Lila. That same day during recess, I overheard 2 boys whispering by the slide. Did you see that? She's got 2 moms. That's weird. Another kid joined in. How does that even work? Which one is the real mom? They weren't even trying to be quiet. Lila was sitting by herself, drawing under the big tree near the edge of the playground. She looked like she was trying to disappear into the dirt. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was my mom's voice in the back of my mind. Maybe it was the look on Lila's face, the one I remembered seeing on Aunt Bella years ago. I walked over to her. Hey, I said, kicking at the grass. Can I see what you're drawing? She glanced up, surprised. Sure. It was a picture of 2 owls in a tree, one reading a book and the other watching the moon. They look like your mom's, I said with a smile. Her eyes lit up. They are. I sat down next to her, and we spent the rest of recess coloring on the back of a math worksheet. The next day, I invited her to sit next to me at lunch. She did. By the end of the week, we were best friends, but not everyone liked it. One morning, 2 boys from the other 4th grade class stopped us in the hallway. You sit with the girl with the weird moms, one of them said, like it was an insult. I looked him straight in the eye and said, so? He opened his mouth, then closed it, then walked away. I told my mom about it later that evening. We were peeling potatoes for dinner. She gave me a long look and said, you stood up for someone. That's brave. I shrugged. It just felt like the right thing. She smiled. It was. For the first time, I understood what she'd meant all those years ago. Different doesn't mean wrong. At school, kids kept saying little things. Some were mean, some were just confused. One girl asked Lila, what happens if your moms both tell you something different? Do you listen to the one who cooks more? Another boy asked, do you call one mom and one other mom? Sometimes. Lila laughed it off. Sometimes she didn't. One day, she cried after class. She waited until most kids had left and then sat at her desk, head down, sniffling. I went back inside. They were laughing again, she said quietly. Calling my family fake. I sat down beside her. They don't understand, I said. But that doesn't make them right. She didn't say anything. She just leaned her head on my shoulder. I remember thinking how unfair it was. How easy it was for kids to repeat the things they'd heard at home, not realizing how sharp those words could be. How deep they could cut. The next week, our teacher assigned a family tree project. We had to draw our family and explain who was who. Lila looked nervous. That weekend, she came over to my house to work on it. I showed her my family tree, me, Mom, Dad, my little brother, my dog, and even Aunt Bella and Maya. She stared at it for a moment. Who are they? She asked, pointing to Bella and Maya, my aunt and her partner, I said. They've been together forever. She smiled. You put them on your tree. Of course I did. She bit her lip. Maybe I'll put both my moms on mine, then. You should. She did. When she presented it in front of the class, her voice trembled a little. But she held up her drawing, a beautiful mess of hearts and curly lines and smiling stick figures, and said, "This is my family. They love me. That's what matters." Nobody said anything mean that day. Not out loud, anyway. After class, I gave her a high five. You were awesome, I said. Thanks, she grinned. I was scared. You did it anyway. Like your aunt, she asked. Yeah, just like her. That night, I told Mom everything. The project. The teasing. The drawing. The way Lila stood up in front of everyone, even though her hands were shaking. My Mom listened quietly, the way she always did. Then she put her hand on mine and said, "You're turning into someone I really admire." I didn't really know what that meant at the time. But I smiled anyway. Looking back now, I realize that was the beginning of something bigger. The moment when kindness stopped being something I was taught, and started being something I chose, again and again, because the world doesn't make it easy, but sometimes, the best lessons come from what we do with the words we were given, and I had been given a good one. That's okay too. It had passed from my mom to me, and now, it had reached Lila. When I was 16, my mom got sick. At first, it was little things. She got tired faster, forgot where she'd left her keys, missed a few days of work. Nothing that felt serious. Just stuff you'd blame on a busy week or stress. But then one morning she collapsed in the kitchen. We were supposed to go to the farmer's market. I remember holding 2 canvas bags and asking her if she wanted apples or oranges. She laughed and said, "Whichever looks juicier." 5 minutes later, she was on the floor. That's the moment my world tilted and never fully straightened out again. The diagnosis came like a thunderstorm. Fast. Heavy. Unexpected. A brain tumor. The words didn't even sound real. Brain tumors happened. In movies. In health class. Not to my mom, but it was real. She went from walking around the house humming old soul songs to sitting in a hospital bed with machines beeping around her in less than 3 weeks, and through it all, she still smiled when she could. Still held my hand when I cried. Still told me to remember who I was. "I need you to be strong," she whispered one night when the nurse left the room. But not the fake kind of strong. Not the kind where you pretend everything's fine. I mean the kind where you stay kind. Even when life gets hard. I didn't know how to respond. I just nodded. The days blurred together. School didn't matter. Friends didn't matter. Even Lila, who had always known when something was wrong with me before I did, didn't know what to say. I stopped eating much. Stopped talking. I just sat by her hospital bed every day, waiting for a miracle no one promised. One day, she asked me to bring her a picture. Of what? I asked. Of you. And Aunt Bella. And Maya. So I dug through the photo box at home. Found one from when I was 10, Aunt Bella and Maya smiling on either side of me at the park, holding giant ice cream cones, all our faces sticky with joy. I looked like I didn't have a care in the world. I brought it to the hospital. Mom stared at it for a long time. "They were always brave," she said. "So were you." She paused, then added, "You're going to need that bravery, too." "Why?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just looked at me, like she was trying to memorize my face. She passed away 2 weeks later. I don't remember the funeral clearly. I remember the smell of flowers. The way my dress shoes pinched. The way people kept touching my arm and saying things like, "She's in a better place," and "You're so strong," and "Let us know if you need anything," but no one ever called after. Grief is strange. It doesn't feel like sadness. Not exactly. It feels like falling in slow motion, over and over, and never quite landing. Like looking for someone in every room even though you know they're not going to be there. I stayed in my room a lot after that. Just stared at the ceiling. Or played the voicemail she left on my phone, over and over, just to hear her voice, and yet, even in all of that pain, I could still hear what she had told me all those years ago. When I was 7. When I asked the simple question about Aunt Bella, that's okay too. It was strange, really. Of all the things she said, all the advice she gave, that one sentence stood the tallest. When the world felt confusing, or cruel, or unfair, those words came back. When I heard someone at school make a joke about someone being too gay, I felt her voice rise up in my chest. When I saw Aunt Bella come to the funeral and quietly stand in the back, Maya holding her hand, I walked across the room and hugged them both, hard. Because Mom would have wanted me to, even though some of my relatives just watched us and whispered even. Though Grandma barely made eye contact with Maya. I didn't care. I stood there in the middle of the room, arms wrapped around the two people who had once been judged for loving each other, and I felt peaceful. Not happy, but anchored. After the funeral, Maya pulled me aside. Her eyes were puffy, and her voice was shaky. Your mom loved you more than anything, she said. And she loved us, too. Do you know how rare that is? For someone to love us openly, without apology? I nodded. She told me once, Maya said, that you'd grow up to be someone who made people feel safe. That hit me harder than anything that day. I cried. Right there, in front of her. No shame. No trying to hold it in, and she hugged me like she'd known me since I was born. In the months that followed, I started writing letters to my mom, not to send. Just to write. I wrote about how school was going. About how Lila stayed over one weekend and we talked all night about life and loss. About how Aunt Bella was still the strongest person I knew, even though she cried sometimes when no one was looking, and I wrote about that sentence, that's okay too. I told her how I'd started to say it to myself when I felt overwhelmed. How I used it when I saw someone else get judged or mocked. How I whispered it under my breath when I was scared. It became my compass. My grounding line. Even without her, my mom's words gave me direction, and slowly, very slowly, I started to heal. Not all at once. Not completely. But enough to keep going. Grief, I realized, doesn't shrink. It just becomes part of your shape. You learn to carry it. You learn to speak through it, and if you're lucky, you carry something else with it. A sentence. A memory. A piece of love that's so strong, it doesn't fade with time. That was my mom's gift to me. I was 23 when I fell in love with someone I never expected. Her name was Ren. She had short curly hair dyed the color of copper, wore flannel shirts and rings on nearly every finger, and laughed like nothing in the world could scare her. The first time I met her, she was arguing with a professor over the ethics of advertising during a communications lecture. Everyone else in the room was either half asleep or scrolling on their phones. But she was fully alive. I couldn't stop watching her. And that scared me. At first, I thought it was just admiration. That I wanted to be like her, bold, loud, unbothered. But when she laughed at one of my jokes a few weeks later and touched my shoulder, I felt my entire body light up like a struck match. That's when I knew. Or maybe, that's when I let myself admit it. I didn't say anything to anyone, though. Not at first. Not even to Lila, who had been my best friend since the 4th grade and probably knew me better than anyone. I just sat with it, and it was messy, because even though I had grown up hearing kind, accepting words, that's okay too, the world outside my mom's voice hadn't always agreed. I still remembered how some relatives reacted to Aunt Bella. How people at school treated Lila. How some kids got pushed into lockers just for being different. How people stared, gossiped, judged. So I told myself it was a phase, that maybe I was just lonely. That maybe I was reading too much into things. I even went on a few more dates with guys, nice guys, sweet ones, but when they kissed me, I felt nothing, like someone was turning up the music but I couldn't hear the melody. With Ren, though, it was different. It was the way she looked at me when I spoke, like my words were important. It was the late-night phone calls that lasted until morning. The notes she left in my books. The way she said my name like it was something precious, but I still couldn't say it out loud. Not yet. Then one night, we went to a poetry reading. We sat shoulder to shoulder in the back row, knees barely touching. The air was thick with incense and cheap red wine. Someone stood at the front and read a piece about falling in love with their best friend. The way their voice shook, the way they described fear and freedom all tangled together, it hit something deep inside me. I looked over at Ren, and she was already looking at me. We didn't say anything, but we didn't have to. That night, she walked me home. And when we got to my door, she leaned in slowly, gave me a chance to pull away. I didn't. The kiss was soft, uncertain, careful, but real. So real, I thought my heart might break from how much it needed it. Afterward, she pulled back and whispered, "You don't have to say anything." I didn't. Not right then, but 2 days later, I did. I told Lila first. We were sitting on my couch, drinking tea and watching a documentary about birds for no reason at all. "I think I like a girl," I said as she blinked. "Okay," she said. I waited for more, for questions, for surprise. But she just took a sip of her tea and added, "Is she cute?" I laughed. I cried. I told her everything. Then I told Aunt Bella. We met at a quiet cafe, the same one she used to take me to when I was a kid. I used to get hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. This time, I ordered chamomile tea, but the nerves in my stomach made me feel like I was 5 years old again. "I think I like women," I told her. She didn't react right away, then she reached across the table and took my hand in hers. "You don't have to explain anything to me," she said. "I've known since you were 15. "What?" She smiled. "You asked too many questions about queer authors." We laughed for a long time, then she said something that felt like a hand on my back, steadying me. "Don't be afraid of who you are. Fear's a thief. It steals years." That night, I thought about my mom. I thought about the way she had explained love to me so simply. The way she had made space for different kinds of people, even when others didn't. I imagined her sitting beside me on my bed, telling me it was okay to be afraid, but it was better to be honest. I missed her so much it hurt. But I also felt her with me. In every decision. In every word I chose. In every kind truth I told myself. When the fear crept in. One evening, I found myself standing in front of the bathroom mirror, whispering, "That's okay too." Like a mantra, like a promise, that sentence became my armor. My compass. My permission. Slip to be real. I started writing again. Poetry, mostly. Little thoughts about love and confusion and silence and clarity. I even read at an open mic night, something I never thought I'd have the courage to do. Ren came with me. Sat in the front row. Clapped the loudest. We didn't define anything right away. Didn't rush to label it. We just let it be what it was, good. Real. Honest. But one night, while we were sitting on a bench overlooking the river, Ren said, "I feel safe with you." And I knew. I felt the same. For the first time in my life, love didn't feel like something I had to explain or defend. It felt like something I could simply allow, and maybe that's what my mom had meant all along, that love doesn't need permission. It just needs space. By the time I turned 30, life had begun to settle into a rhythm. I had a job I didn't hate, a partner I adored, and a small rented house with uneven floors and more plants than furniture. Ren and I adopted a rescue dog named Miso, who barked at rain but loved bubble baths. Our fridge was covered in postcards and magnets from bookstores we visited on road trips. The living room had fairy lights. It felt like home. And then, our daughter arrived. Her name was Ellie. We didn't plan to become parents so soon, maybe not even at all. But sometimes, the best things show up uninvited, like sunlight through a window you forgot you opened. Ellie was 5 pounds, 9 ounces of wild hair and wide eyes. She screamed nonstop the first 2 days and only stopped when Ren held her close and sang terribly off-key. I had never loved anyone more. From the moment we brought her home, I saw my mom everywhere. In the way Ellie curled her fingers around mine. In the way Ren danced with her in the kitchen like no one was watching. In the quiet moments at 2 a.m. When the world was still and the only sound was a tiny breath rising and falling in my arms. I told Ellie stories about her grandmother as soon as she could sit up. How she smelled like cinnamon and mint. How she never rushed through explanations. How she once taught me the word compassion by showing it instead of just defining it. When Ellie turned 4, she started asking more questions, big ones. The kind that stopped me mid-step. Why is the sky blue? Where does the sun go at night? Why do people sometimes look sad when they smile? And then one day, she asked a question I never expected, but maybe should have. We were watching a cartoon on the couch. A princess was dancing with a prince, twirling in a gown made of sparkles and cliché. Ellie tilted her head and said, "Mama, how come in all the shows, the girls always marry boys?" I blinked. "Well," I said slowly, "not all girls marry boys." She frowned. "But in every movie I see, they do." I paused the show. She turned to face me, small and serious, and I realized, This was it, this was the moment, the same moment my mom had with me when I was 7, holding a plate of fried chicken and answering a question about Aunt Bella with calm, honest love. I took a breath. I didn't need to make a speech. I knelt beside Ellie and looked her in the eyes. Most women marry men, I said gently. And most men marry women. But sometimes, women love other women. And sometimes, men love other men. She blinked at me. That's okay too, I added. She nodded slowly. Like you and Mama Ren? Exactly. She thought for a second, then she smiled. Okay. And just like that, like flipping a light switch, she turned back to the TV and pressed play. I sat there, frozen for a moment, staring at her little back, her small hands holding the remote like it was no big deal. Because to her, it wasn't. She wasn't confused. She wasn't uncomfortable. She didn't ask 5 more questions or wrinkle her nose. She understood. Because the truth is simple when you don't bury it under fear. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and had to wipe my eyes before I poured her juice. That night, I told Ren what happened. She asked. Huh? She said with a knowing smile. She did. And I said the thing. The sentence. Ren leaned her head on my shoulder. She's lucky to have you. I didn't feel wise or perfect. I still got overwhelmed. Still forgot where I put my phone. Still worried about money, about the future, about whether we were giving her enough love to last a lifetime. But in that moment, I felt something solid in my chest. A quiet certainty. A thread, stretching from my mom to me, and now to Ellie. The sentence had passed through 3 generations now. That's okay too. Years later, when Ellie was in 5th grade, she came home with a story. One of her classmates had 2 dads, and another student said something mean about it. I told her not to listen, Ellie said, taking off her backpack. Did she feel better? She smiled. I think so. I ruffled her hair. You're a good friend. She shrugged like it was nothing, but I knew better. She was already becoming someone who made others feel safe, just like my mom once said I would. That night, I went out to the porch and sat alone under the stars. Miso curled up at my feet. The wind was gentle, the air smelled like jasmine, and I let the silence wrap around me like a warm sweater. I closed my eyes and whispered into the dark, "Thanks, Mom." She wasn't there, not physically. But I felt her, like always. In the softness of Ellie's voice. In the quiet courage Ren showed when no one was looking. In the words that lived like a hum in my bones. She never got to meet Ellie. Never got to see the way our little family had grown. But her love had shaped it all, and now, I carried it forward, not with grand declarations. Not with perfection, but with one simple truth, passed down gently, like a torch lit from a match, lit from a candle, lit from a flame that never dies. That's okay too. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more of these stories.